Hello, today is the 25th March. We're having a MicroProfile technical call. Please add your name to the meeting minutes and I help out to do the minutes as well. That would be great. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Yeah, please add your name here, agenda. So it's for the ones who missed the last week's steering committee call, and John and I basically presented, mainly John presented the proposal hosting MicroProfile in Jakarta EE. So it's so I think Michael, I don't know whether you followed the offline conversation or not.
So I first heard about it from Tanya
Okay.
at Java 1 last week, and we had we had a good discussion about it. And my feelings on a lot of this stuff, but I understand the rationale behind it. And this is the first time I'm seeing these Google slides, so I'd have to read through that. But yeah, and then of course, David provided his input, which was a good read, I thought.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that's basically the kind of since the MicroProfile, basically the kind of Lotus spec matured, and also the proposal moving MicroProfile configure to Jakarta, and then with this proposal, no, we don't need to fight against the basically specs and etc. So hopefully the community will work together, and then no more kind of the debate and etc. Which spec should be living where. So yeah, so this is pretty much, and also is kind of less things added to MicroProfile, and probably it's better for the community to work together. Yeah, in the Jakarta E land. Also, there's the offline conversation on the mailing list for the Google group and etc. I think it's a kind of continue the conversation. My suggestion is in the next week's live hangout, probably we kind of assess whether it's in a position to do a ballot or something like that. So John and I will get together next week, early next week, and yeah, we'll review the online conversation and then come up with some like summary, and then hopefully next week we can discuss more and to see when we are in the position to do the ballot and etc. I don't know whether John, would you like to add anything else?
I mean, I'm tracking the conversation, right? And I don't want to say it's split in two, right? David added a post in the Google group that everyone should watch if you haven't. So I know some of our resources linked to the thread that I started, but David also kind of has a thread.
Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So also put in the
take a look at that as well.
Yes.
And provide your feedback there. I don't know. I think maybe just leave it at that.
Well, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I just want, and as you know, we were a contributing member, and now we're guest members, right, of MicroProfile. Numbers that David quoted in there, as far as budgets and what the top organizations pay, for participating. How will that affect the Java user groups like Atlanta and us? I mean, I do have aspirations to be part of a contributing member again at some point, but I mean, and probably this is something may not be able to be answered now, but that's my main concern.
Are you talking about the EE working group members, right?
Right. So the Java user groups under MicroProfile were, was what, 1,500 and then €1,000. So roughly with the conversion, it was like 2,700 a year to participate. Now, will that go up quite a bit if we decide to join again? And how much do we need to budget?
So, Michael, I think Garden State Jug is a guest member of Jakarta EE. Is that?
Yes. Yes, for the moment, we had lost some funding like a year or two ago, and so we, made the hard decision to be a guest member. But I'd like to be a contributing member again, if we get some additional funds to do that.
Right.
So one of the things-
So
Go
you're
ahead.
you're for Jakarta, you're thinking you'd like to upgrade your membership to participant member, is that right?
Oh, but that maybe whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
it was participating. Yeah.
So David's post was a little bit inaccurate, and then he said the highest cost is 25K, right, for the largest vendors in MicroProfile. It's actually 10K. And for individual, or not individual, but for user groups basically under 10 employees, right? It's like $1,500.
Oh, all right. So for the
And
most
that's
part, it won't go up
MicroProfile.
for us. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think, yeah, is it similar for Jakarta for the lowest entry? I'm looking at the working group fees right now for Jakarta.
Oh, that's documented somewhere. That
Yeah, it's
probably
here. I'll paste it
I
in.
probably
It's in the
knew at
charter.
one point.
It's in the charter in both.
Oh,
Here,
okay.
here's the Jakarta EE charter, and here
So,
is
I think Jakarta EE is 2,500 lowest. Actually,
Right.
at today's steering committee call in Jakarta EE, there it didn't mention JAG, and then I think there's a proposal to add a JAG. Probably you will basically it's 2,500,
Okay.
right?
All right. That gives us a ballpark. Yeah.
Is
well,
a
I'm looking at the Jakarta charter, and for anything greater than a participant member, which is where you are today, right? Because that's $0.
Yeah. Well, I thought we were guests, right?
Well, according to Jakarta, it says Java user groups is $0 for a participant member, and I think that's a non-voting member. If you want to have a vote,
Right. Yeah.
then that is a strategic member or a voted in enterprise member, right? Because it can only be, I think there's one or two enterprise voting members. I'd have to go look at the charter.
There are two enterprise member votes, and then
Okay,
there's a
it's
single
those two.
vote for participant members.
Click
So
Yes.
click the
you get, I mean, you can try to lean on whoever it is that is the participant member, but and you can also run to be the the representative. So,
Yeah.
but you represent that group.
Right. Right. And so what we did in the when we first joined, we did have voting privilege, I believe, or binding votes. But of course now we don't. But
Yeah, to guarantee
Okay.
yourself a vote, it's going to be a strategic member, which
okay.
is like $25,000 at the low end.
Oh, 25,000. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
and for an enterprise member,
25,000.
Strategic members are
yeah,
The
to guarantee yourself
strategic
a
one.
vote, that's what it costs. And this is why one of the reasons I always go back to the non-technical differences between the two working groups. One of them is the cost of entry, right? And by entry, I mean having a vote. There's a big difference between MicroProfile and Jakarta. So, could I would never want it to be $0 as a permanent voting member just because then every user group could join, never participate, and get a vote, right? So, right, someone's got to have you got to have some kind of skin in the game in order to to get a vote, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily disagree that it shouldn't it should be non-zero, but the entrance fee is much higher for Jakarta than it is for MicroProfile.
Okay.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But I guess, like I said, this doesn't, I mean, this is still in the proposal phase. It has to be voted. And from based on what everybody's input, it looks like it's going to pass anyway, but you never know.
Well, you never know. And
Right.
to be honest, and like I said, everyone focuses on the technical stuff and not the non-technical stuff, which is what I always point out.
So
Yeah.
on that non-technical stuff, there's a bunch of other repositories and material that we'll need to would need to be included in this proposal, right? It might be helpful if we could find, what do we think, where do we think these things should go? Well, for example, MicroProfile starter, right? Do we want that to be always separate,
Oh,
or should it be a
right.
starter? Should it be a profile that you select from the Jakarta EE starter? I don't know. I'm just asking the question.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I've been pondering this question about the scope of the conversation, and if things were to move over to Jakarta, the scope of that as well, Ed, at the initial, at the initial attempt to move. And I think one of the things that worries me is, and even in David's thread, Alistair responded to me about, well, should there be a core profile and a MicroProfile, right? There could be like 25 different offshoots, I just threw a number out there, random number, right? Offshoots of discussion that could complicate the overall discussion, I think, right? The details, and the details matter, but do they matter at the initial discussion and attempt to move, or should it happen after a vote happens, right? If the ballot fails, then no issue. If the ballot passes, then maybe things move over as is and we fix it after the fact. Or we decide after the vote some of these details, because I'm not sure how important these details are to the overall discussion, the focus of the discussion. That's kind of where I've been thinking. Others, feel free to step in as well.
Yeah, the thing is that, go ahead.
Yeah, this is exactly what, so John, what you said is exactly what I said as Jakarta EE platform core. I think my personal kind of the suggestion is move as it is over to Jakarta, basically is org, and then can work out like the fine details. Basically, it's whether to keep the namespace and also change the spec name and etc. I think one step ahead. So basically, it's kind of the is before the release. Is anything could change, and then is we gradually work our way through. If we just spend the time to discuss the fine details, maybe it's the same time next year we are still here to do the discussion. I think we need to basically define the long-term goal, basically the roadmap direction. Once we set up the direction, and then we move basically slowly and steadily, and at least making some progress. Yeah, Cesar, go ahead.
Yeah, so once that let's move forward, and let's say, okay, the project goes to Jakarta EE side of the fence. All those details about what's going to happen with the starter and all that, that's going to be up to the Jakarta EE working group. As Emily pointed out, correct me if I am wrong, Emily, but the proposal doesn't include, and I don't think Jakarta working group is part of the conversation about changing the way it will operate the Jakarta working group. That remains the same, as far as I understood from the proposal. So once it's migrated, donated, I don't know what is the correct term, the legal term. It's up to the Jakarta working group to decide what to do with details, as John was mentioned. All the ones that are here with the MicroProfile t-shirt at this point, unless we are part also of the Jakarta working group on a voting member t-shirt, it's up to that committees to decide what to do with those details. That's how I understand, right?
Yeah. So basically, this is two-way kind of this is like two-way operation. is we vote, okay, we want to basically seek a new home. And then basically Jakarta basically offer the home and then kind of work together and to basically make it work.
Yeah, but once you do the transition, there is no more. How can I say? It's like there it's up to Jakarta working groups what the decisions about anything related with details as we were previously talking about.
But we should probably try to decide what, how, I mean, so there are some structural differences, right? A committer member for MicroProfile is a committer member on all the specifications that are in MicroProfile. So under Jakarta EE, we don't have that blanket. There isn't a blanket, grant to the committer members. So, for the specifications, I think it's pretty easy for us to make a mapping, okay, you were a committer in this specification, you can be a committer in whatever that specification becomes under Jakarta EE. And then as it evolves, the representation stays constant there. But in the ancillary things, the starter, for example, there's a starter project. There's not a specification, right? We could add all of the all of the MicroProfile members to that project, or we could request we want to make a new starter project for MicroProfile, right? I don't know what the right choice is here, but those are the kinds of things we probably want to at least say. This is what we would like to do as part of this transition, right? The website stuff, right? Again, all of the specifications, I assuming that we could just salt those into the Jakarta EE specifications page. I don't know that that's what we want to propose. Seems reasonable to me. Is that the kind of detail we should get? Try to say this is what we want coming in, right? I don't know how much, I understand, Emily, you're trying to be sensitive. You don't want to solve the detailed minutia right now, but we should try to settle on what it is we do want to, when we do the transition, what do we want? What would we like things to look like at least day one after the transition?
Yeah, that's a spot on ad. I think is basically we need to list all the MicroProfile project. So it's and categorize them for the specs. Basically, this is the mapping to the basically the new repo, and for the non-spec stuff like probably the build infrastructure and etc. And then the also need to work out whether like yeah, is pretty much like the project, not like basically related to Jakarta EE, because in Jakarta EE org, that's pretty much all Jakarta EE specs. So I think is I have to do. I will produce a list of the basically the MP repos and map to new repo. Basically either Jakarta EE or some other place. I think for the Jakarta starter, that's not Jakarta starter isn't Jakarta starter is not basically not a spec. So directly is E4G. Maybe is a here like maybe a MicroProfile structure need to live somewhere here, right? Yeah, and also some like some repos like the MicroProfile demo or something, maybe we directly sunset it because it's kind of pretty much is auto date and nobody use it, and then use this time to delete them. But whatever it will happen, so we need to list all of the MicroProfile repos and either mark it as not to move, or cannot pretty much move to a particular area. And then we can review this in the next technical call. I think that's kind of the fine details, but it's important to think that through. Is
So
that
one of-
that's your concern?
Me, yes.
That
I think, yes, I think it would be good if we have an inventory and, at least we, if we have a recommendation for where we'd like to see, that repository or that resource, whatever it is, land, I think we should make it.
Okay.
So similarly, if you look at the Jakarta EE specification project, so the platform specification project, that is the host for core profile, web profile, and the platform. Are we going to propose that we want a new specification that is the MicroProfile profile?
So this is yeah. So I kind of think it's much better to live like here is github.com/Jakarta / because the core profile and web profile is basically in the directory in the Jakarta EE kind of the
They're all in the platform. So that right now we have the Jakarta EE has one platform specification group, and that covers all that covers the entire range of what's in Jakarta EE, right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't clear to me whether we want web profile to go into that, which it certainly could, or maybe it makes sense to just combine it with the rest of the platform. I don't know what we want. We should try to clarify. I feel like it would be good if we clarified what our desire is.
My suggestion is we do it like this. We do like a Jakarta EE /MicroProfile. The reason being like this is for this one is kind of, and then if we have like a move the hills, so that would be directly going here. So it's basically it's almost like this is root. It's obviously it's from GitHub repo point of view is a standard, but logically they're grouped. And also this kind of will be easier to do the independent releases and etc. because it's not part of Jakarta EE platform release. It's not like Jakarta EE 12 and Jakarta EE 13 and etc.
So I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of having multiple releases of platforms of the profiles, right? I mean, we've talked about having multiple releases of core profile. I think it could fit within the existing structure. Again, I'm just suggesting we should try to be, we should try to figure out how we want this. So you would like to see github.com / what is it? For
MicroProfile.
Jakarta EE / MicroProfile.
Yeah.
And then under MicroProfile, so then we should map this out and make sure that that's clear to everybody, because that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
So with Jakarta 11, right, we had core profile already released. There was no fanfare, right? It was kind of, it was done as a step, but not necessarily announced per se. Web profile is going through a ballot. And I'm assuming web profile is going to have the similar, like no fanfare release. Are we waiting for the full platform for Jakarta 11? And the reason I asked, go ahead.
So I think the marketing team is proposed is, so when a core profile was originally released, we thought web profile and platform would follow within a few months, right? That didn't happen. So we've been kind of slow rolling ourselves underneath the treads in terms of announcements. They plan to make some social media announcements and stuff with the web profile, but I don't think anybody in Jakarta EE was prepared for the amount of time it was going to take post release of core profile.
Right. And the reason I say that is because I think with MicroProfile, we would want to make a little bit of a larger fanfare, right? So when we have a platform release, platform, a MicroProfile release, right, according to the spec, kind of like we do today, right, where we would want to make a little bit more noise than maybe some of the other Jakarta profiles.
And I guess I'm hopeful that Jakarta EE will welcome that, right? We would like to have more, the marketing group would like to have more announcements to make about things that are meaningful, right? So you know, I think it's possible to do this within the existing structure, and I'm pretty sure that it might require some, you know, some modifications in the way Jakarta EE thinks. But hey, you know, I'm willing to try and make that stuff work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
You know, so for another example, I think the people that join the MicroProfile marketing team, right? We should be able, all of those people should be able to join, at least initially, into the. I'm hoping that they can join into the Jakarta EE marketing team, and then, you know, if people continue, you know, we have to coordinate things, but I'm not sure we want to have a separate marketing discussion for MicroProfile, Jakarta EE MicroProfile. But, you know, we certainly would want to be coordinated, and I don't think it, you know, it'd be nice. Just thinking about my personal time, right? It'd be nice to have one meeting instead of two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the areas where the two working groups are also different, right? Where as part of our, you know, flatter governance model, we don't have, right, separate committees, and anybody can join a marketing call, even if you're not a member, right? So it's wide open, kind of like our live hangouts are. And so, right, there's things that would have to be resolved around that, and Jakarta may not want that, and it's a discussion that needs to be had.
Yeah, we should ask for it, right? If this
Yeah.
is what we would like, right? Can Jakarta EE open all of its meetings, right? Is there any, you know, and I personally think as long as people are contributing and, you know, not blocking progress, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't welcome, you know, whoever wants to join. I mean, hell, if you ask me, I think the biggest problem both of these groups have is, you know, people that are willing to carry water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay, so so for the action and etc. So basically, we'll continue monitor the email, the basically mailing list conversations, and also I will produce basically the whole list of MicroProfile repos, and then propose the kind of the new repo names and etc. So we can review in the next technical pool. And then as for like the what will happen to the basically Jakarta EE side, I think the proposal and etc. or the meetings and etc. I think is kind of that can in a separate discussion. So it's kind of, yeah, don't know what kind of the a guideline or the requirement in Jakarta land for the meetings and etc. But we can yeah, work the way through for this.
So
Are there any?
well, I know we have other things on the agenda, but real quick, I guess this proposal was just discussed among the MicroProfile working group last Tuesday. And if so, I know some folks from the Jakarta EE side chimed in on the email, but would it be worth having some kind of big Zoom meeting with representatives from both working groups, just to sort of, hash this out. And that'll be the only topic, right? So it sounds like there's going to be growing pains on both sides based on what I heard over the last 2 minutes. So I don't know, what's everybody's thought on that?
Yeah, I
And
was
what's the
sorry.
timing too? That's the other thing.
Right. So I was going to mention after this one. So basically, this is a pretty much a kind of focus on MicroProfile side of the fence. Actually, at today's Jakarta EE platform call, I also mentioned this kind of the proposal. So basically, the community is fully aware of this. Also at a steering committee for Jakarta EE. So I also went through the proposal, took the whole committee kind of through the proposal as well. So this is a two-side conversation. So because MicroProfile is seeking a new host, so MicroProfile has to decide within the MicroProfile community. So agree. So yes, we want Jakarta EE to host a MicroProfile. So from the MicroProfile steering committee call, I kind of proposed basically 2-week conversation window. But there was a suggestion if the offline conversation is really, really busy, like after these 2 weeks, and then maybe it's worthwhile to wait. So my suggestion is earlier I also mentioned, so it's at next week's basically live hangout. We basically make a decision whether also we make a decision to see when is kind of we can start a ballot. So we also need to come up with kind of the resolution statement as well. We need to draft a resolution. So John and I normally we will meet up regularly. So we will basically review the kind of conversation and also draft the proposal. And then next week live hangout, and then we'll discuss among the group to see whether it's time to do the vote. If not, when. So it's a kind of, we have to basically continue monitoring the offline conversation. And also we need to bear in mind be mindful, and even the offline conversation and then people don't agree, and we have to agree on the disagreement. So at some point, I think I would think maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we could be able to reach to the situation we can start a ballot. And once the ballot completed, if it's basically successful, and then we'll have to take to Jakarta EE side. Jakarta EE will have to discuss this the basically hosting MicroProfile in Jakarta. So it's a 2 steps. The first step 1 is the MicroProfile community is happy to basically move MicroProfile to Jakarta, and then second step is Jakarta is willing to take a MicroProfile as well. So does that clarify your concerns, your questions?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I guess I guess my intent was to, have a big discussion among both groups, because, we had a few opinions one way, a few opinions the other, and, who else out there may want to, add their voice to all this. That's all. But yeah, what you said makes sense. Yeah, so that makes, thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's definitely too early for a call, because the conversation will go 100 different ways. I think, and I don't mean that in necessarily a negative way. I'm just hoping that in the mailing list we can have that conversation and whittle it down to the things, you know, some things we'll have consensus on, some things we won't. And I think once the conversation in the Google group kind of gets closer to that point, then maybe we could have a call to discuss these things where we could focus on, have a much more narrow focus for the call, right? Where people are like, you know, laser focused on a certain aspect, right? And you know, maybe it's namespace, right? Which will definitely be a part of a conversation. I could see maybe that happening on a call. And maybe it's not one call, maybe it's a series of calls, right? As we go through each one of these things. And in terms of time frame, in my mind, I don't necessarily have like a hard time frame for this. Obviously, there has to be an end to it. Where we left off at from last Tuesday's call was let the conversation just happen, and it'll eventually narrow itself down over time. And we kind of left that, you know, over time a little open ended. Will it happen in 2 weeks? I don't know. Will it happen in a month? I hope so. Um, I don't know. That's kind of how I see it. I just want to make sure that we don't rush this, and that you know enough people are heard and some of these ideas are really fleshed out. That's just how I look at it. The end.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. So maybe I mean, I know we're not voting members, but maybe I'll just, you know, add my 2 cents for what it's worth, you know, to the conversation at some point. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But,
your input
yeah.
matters. Even though you're not a voting member,
Yeah.
you're still an active member, right?
Mhm.
And the user group, you know, is an active member. So I think your perspective does matter.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so everybody is encouraged to air your opinion, etc. So there's 2 mailing list. So go ahead to post your idea and all the comments and feelings, and there. So we constantly monitor the mailing list, and then it's basically review and decide when to put a resolution forward. Okay, so that's good. Are there anything else people want to discuss on this topic? Okay, by the way, this is the kind of this is a major topic for the future for the rest of course for the live hangout, technical call, and etc. And every week we'll discuss this. So it's hopefully we can narrow this down. Come up with a resolution and move forward. So the next thing is the kind of the launching 4G MicroProfile cutter. This is for the launching 4G kind of the demonstration for the apps. So this repo created. There's a new basically more people showed interest. So the meeting time currently is on Monday. So that will basically there's some other suggestions and with the different time slot and etc. If you are interested to contribute, so basically, please, basically, if you plan to contribute, and then please add your name to the basically doodle poll. Otherwise, people put their name in and then schedule a time, and then they don't show up, and eventually the other active members couldn't join. So this is make a even smaller kind of the group. So please vote by Friday this week. The other thing is the MicroProfile 7.1 release is on track. So the telemetry 2.1 was created, and also the OpenAPI 4.1 RC1 created. I also noticed that the final release 4.1 was also staged in the OpenAPI. So it's that's all looks quite good, and the next target is basically we need to, so March the 25th, final basically candidates release. This is they all kind of the achieved the deadline. So John, we need to basically do the umbrella bomb update this week. Yeah. So it's due 1st April. So hopefully we'll get that basically update the bomb. So again, this is the small one. And then like the umbrella spec candidate release due 2 weeks. So that should be fun. I think we will just target that. Any comments for this? So to update. Okay, good. So the final thing is the MP tutorial. So all chapters has been kind of the created by Turin, and then demo up. Basically, I reviewed the demo up PR, so other comments need to be updated. Who put this one? I think that must be a mistake. Okay, I will delete it.
Yeah, not me.
Don't know what
You can go to
happened.
the history and look.
Oh, Zulu. Okay. And then the kind of the other thing, the 2 new PRs to be reviewed. So please help out with the review. So it's the REST client and JWT. So it's so this is kind of the 4 days ago it's created. So once this is done, then pretty much done. So let's hope, let's aim to get it reviewed by next week, at the end of next week. So it's so that provide feedback for Turin, and then he can hopefully conclude this at least in April. So we will have a full MicroProfile tutorial. Again, to add a comment here is also need to work out where to host the MicroProfile tutorial as well. So this is all these repos. I will create a list to list all of the repos, and then kind of the propose a new location for them. Okay, so that's kind of all the items I want to discuss. Are there anything else people want to bring up?
Yeah, I got one thing. It's a discussion about multi-app deployments on MicroProfile.
Yeah.
So there's a thread going on, right? And it's kind of interesting that we've never really, or more recently, had this talk. I think early on we did, and it was kind of geared more toward microservices and a single app. And it looks like OpenAPI and telemetry specifically say yes. Metric specifically says no, and the other ones are undefined. And the question is, do we want to define it? It becomes more interesting in the context of Jakarta, right? The move to Jakarta, but it's a conversation that has to be had even outside of that, because I know that, or from my understanding, Wildfly has some workarounds to implement it. Emily, I'm suspecting Open Liberty has some, ways they've made judgment calls. And is it going to be different between the two? Or I know Tommy Tribe supports it, right? Is that a third way? And is this an area that needs to be clarified and spec'd out? So
Yes.
that's where I wanted to open this up.
Yeah, so basically it's I commented on the thread there. So it's Open Liberty is yeah, supports multi app. Basically it's per runtime. So it's I think it's for the most specs, as far as I know, have this kind of the optional parts for the multi app. So we basically is for example, even MicroProfile health also basically saying aggregate the kind of overall health and etc. So it's so I said to Brian, I said if we noticed any other spec hasn't got that kind of the mentioning and etc. and then raise the issue, I think we should have that fixed. So for now I don't know which is where's the gap. So it's kind of, I think most things should work and documented. If not, and we should kind of get them documented. We'll
So
yeah.
Ed, does Helidon support any concept of a multi-app, or is it kind of like Quarkus? It's like, nah, it's just a single.
Everything's an application. We don't.
Yeah. That's what. Just double checking. So you guys are kind of in a similar. Now Pyara Micro is that single app as well? No one. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I find it wrong. Yeah, yeah, we are working to resolve that, move the application execution on the side of the server. But yeah, probably we need to migrate something on the micro, but we need to see.
Yeah, some spec is relevant and some spec is not. And in some spec, we even consider like a year fashion as well, like even multiple walls. As you know, multiple walls we might we use different class loader. Like for config, we even consider the multiple wall that kind of per year deployment.
Yeah, for micro, we are just considering the jar and the war. Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of files.
yeah, the wall. I think for the config is even is a year could work. But anyway, war is kind of pretty much the mainstream.
So the way I look at this, there's two general use cases. One is it's a stepping stone that enables customers to modernize their applications. Even if their target is eventually single app stacks, they kind of need a stepping stone to get there. They want to use MicroProfile, but first they want to do it in the context of a multi-app app server, right? A Jakarta app server. So that's one use case is a stepping stone. One that's I don't know, you know, David kind of brought it up, right? Is the move to microservices kind of somewhat, in some cases, reverting itself back to monoliths, right? And if that's the case, does that also imply multi apps? I don't know the answer to that. Right? We can kind of go look through various discussions online, and some people have just found a happy medium is kind of how I would say it, right? Microliths or whatever you want to call it, right? So not necessarily fine grained, but you know, somewhere in between monoliths and microservices. So in that use case, is that a single app or is that multi-app? I don't yet know the answer to that. But that might be in a second use case. So more longer term.
Right. I think we should have to look at the issues, basically case by case, kind of the fashion. And then like so far I don't have any we don't have any issues. But if there's wildfly has some issues and etc., I think it's so that's what I suggest to Brian and bring up, and then we discuss the case by case basis. So yeah, so Liberty support multi-app for since day one.
All right, and that's all I got.
Yeah, that's a good conversation. Okay, anything else? Okay, if not, you have 6 minutes back. And yeah, so please kind of join the conversation about the MicroProfile to Jakarta move. And we'll get together again next week in the live hangout. Thank you all. Bye, everybody.
Good seeing
Thanks.
y'all. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.